And that's very, very clear to me. And by preparing ourselves emotionally, it does not matter what happens. We will be okay. Just remember to stay in your heart, no matter what, and all will be fine. And that's all I'm doing. Thank you.
Who's next, Miriam?
I think I'll get rich, because I really need it.
Okay, predictions. I hate predictions. Hate them.
The original question was about threats and opportunities.
Yes.
It might not be that anything bad was going to happen in Vancouver. It might be that something good was going to happen something else for you.
For the next 12
Right.
months, clarify, say.
Well,
Next 12 months.
After great.
I think most or many of the salient points have been touched on. I think a threat in the near future is economic, financial. I think, like most people here, that we're not remotely out of the woods. In fact, it's like the Titanic that's sinking. It's hanging in there, but it's ready to do this. I don't want that to happen, but I think we all see that that's a real possibility, and I think likely. So we're going to have a real likelihood of no more dollar as we know it, the promotion of an alternate currency clearly will be in the making, and that's presumably the Amaro or something along those lines. I think there's a good chance that we'll see a movement toward a kind of North American Union in the next 12 months, assuming the financial collapse continues. I think I'm not seeing disclosure, but I do think that we are, in this country, getting really close to social unrest. I don't know how much more people can take before they start getting rocks and guns and taking action of their own. So those are threats. I do think that that disclosure is an opportunity. I'm often the voice of doom when I talk about disclosure. At least I seem that way, but in fact, I'm really not. I emphasize that disclosure is going to be a rough ride, but ultimately it is, I see it as our only way out. And I guess the reason for that is that, I mean, pretend it's 1960 and we have this secret. We know that there's this other technology, but in 1960 it seemed like there's enough oil to last forever. And judging from 1960 levels of consumption, it was not too far off, but this isn't 1960. So we're sucking that down really fast now. So in 1960, you could afford to have a wait-and-see attitude. We don't have that luxury anymore. So whatever the answers to our problems are, water depletion, petroleum problems, ecosystem problems, if there's an answer, it's going to be in the radical technologies that are behind the UFO phenomenon. And so there's the opportunity. If the crisis gets bad enough, I'm working on the assumption that there are those on the inside who may disagree with the policy to let humanity go down with the sinking ship. There's always factions. So I think that there are opportunities for us to be aware to work with any insiders who have the ability to help the situation. And that being the case, we're on this tightrope, you see. It's a very high tightrope. And if we fall, we're going to have a really long fall. By that I mean an infrastructure meltdown. And that is surely something that we don't want to see. Because frankly, our whole world has worked up to a point where we rely on electricity, we rely on computers, and if we have to do without those for a week or a month or 6 months, that's going to be very, very bad. Now, if we get to the other side of the tightrope, I think we're in for a very, very wild ride. Bumpy, but ultimately good. I don't know if this is all going to happen within 12 months, but I think it's a possibility. As far as what we can do, or what I can do, I have a family. I have 2 young people that I'm still raising. It's kind of hard for me to just pick up and go somewhere. I have to figure out a way to make sure that they remain safe and secure. And so I personally believe that it's a good idea to have as much provisions as possible. It's a good idea to stock up in alternate currencies, i.e. metals. I think that's a very good idea. And be prepared to be flexible. That's about all I can say. Thanks.
Who's next?
Oh, right. Alfred. Have you gone? You haven't. Alfred, please.
No, and, well, I'm staying in Vancouver, I think, for the next year. But, no, we're over the next year from November 08 to November 10, a specific quadrant of this mind map, the Mayan calendar, comes into effect, and that's the 6th night of the galactic underworld. So that'll be a slight contraction from the expansion that we've been having this year at certain levels. So things might be more conservative on the disclosure front for the next year or so, but that's counterbalanced by the fact that we're beginning to near the solar maximum. So the index of human excitability begins to come into effect, and all the negative ions make us more excitable, hopefully more creative than aggressive. So I see all of these things as kind of process. I don't think that it's a good thing to carry the meme of the worst case scenario as a reality to plan on, because I think that tends to become paralyzing, and I don't think it's a realistic scenario of what's coming down. Personally, like Rich, I'm going to buy all the gold I can. You know, those of us who exist on the universe to attract whatever support we have, because I think that there's a specific gravity to gold in the material world, which people like me, who's a 5-planet Gemini, and we're generally way out there, gold kind of tends to ground us. But not gold in the sense of wealth, but just in terms of something to help maneuver in the 3rd dimension. I really am very cautious about projecting the worst case scenario as the reality, because I think it's the mean that tends to be the reality, which we generally can see as muddling our way through. And the fear that the worst case scenario activates in people may shut down our personal growth and certainly may induce fear in others. I know that at the personal level, and I just want to share this with David. The first book that I wrote was in 1973. It was called The Age of Cataclysm. And it was the first book that took seismology and geology, the earth sciences, and attempted to integrate it with psychic prediction, including the earth change